Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Regina Campbell, your host here at the Legal Zone. We want to welcome everybody back for our season 3, episode 5. We have a wonderful guest speaker today, which Mr. John Marroni. We will introduce him in a moment and give you a little bit more information. But first, we want to just talk a little bit about our prior speaker. Our last speaker, in case you missed it, was Mr. Jeffrey Landers. He was able to give us information and advice regarding whether to keep or sell a marital home. Please, go ahead and check our last episode. There were some great tips on how to do so, things that you should be giving consideration when you're going through a divorce as to what to do potentially with a marital home, which is often the biggest asset that the parties have. So it has a lot of great tips and information. If you missed it, by all means, go back and look at it on Apple Podcast or any of the locations where you receive your podcast. But today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Mr. John Marroni. We're going to switch our conversation today, and the topic of today is what is a certified divorce lending professional and how they can help you. So just a little bit about Mr. Marroni before I bring him on in. He's adept at helping family lawyers guide their divorcing clients in making informed decisions regarding mortgage equity solutions, mortgage planning options, before and during and after the divorce, basically. In 1995, Mr. Marroni left his career as an engineer to seek a more flexibility in his life to become a mortgage broker. He built his career as a broker in Boston, and he basically started his brokerage company from the ground up, and his business grew very quickly. Mr. Marroni also has a technical background. He was amazed at how difficult the mortgage industry had become with financing and all the different options and the complications surrounding the different mortgage options and in general the industry. So he quickly achieved rapid success by simplifying the process for others, which is one of his gifts. And I'm sure many of us that'd be wonderful, because if the process is difficult, it's great that someone can bring it down to an ability for us to understand and learn. John's main goal is to continue simplifying the mortgage process. He takes his time to understand his clients, his situation, and goals that he creates by helping streamline plans to help others reach their objectives. His niche areas include complicated loans for first-time buyers, self-employed borrowers, and also developing home lending solutions for divorcing couples. We want to welcome Mr. Marroni. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, no, thank you for coming on to the Legal Zone. It's a pleasure, and I think you will bring great insight to this topic and probably be able to help a lot of our viewers out there. So let's start off by discussing what the importance is of having a certified divorce lending professional, for instance, during a high net worth divorce proceeding.
Yeah, so let me just back up a little before we talk
Sure.
about that. Okay, so you introduced me, and you had mentioned that I was an engineer and prior to going into mortgages. So yes, I was in engineering. I actually worked on the Patriot missile system up in Raytheon.
Oh.
And when I left and when I came into mortgages, I was totally amazed by the mortgage industry, how they took something so simple as lending money and they complicated the heck out of it. I'm like, guys, this is not rocket science. It's just, you're just lending money. I mean, because you think about the next biggest purchase someone makes other than a home, and that's an automobile. And you think about that financing process. I'm talking after they agree upon the price, the person walks into the business office, gives them all the information. Business person says, you are approved. It's 10 a.m. now. We'll have the car washed by 11. At noon, you're driving out. That's simple. And I'm thinking, why can't we buying a home be so simple? And I have simplified the process where when someone says, how do I know what I qualify for? And I said, well, we have to break the ICE. It's an acronym I made up. It's income, credit, equity. If I know those three things, I know exactly what I can do for you. So, and I've always, over the years, worked with self-employed borrowers, first-time home buyers, and divorcing couples. And then over, the last 3 years, I got my certification, certified divorce lending professional. And what that does is it takes a deeper dive, looking at divorcing couples, different types of strategies. So what I encourage is for me to get involved with the family law attorney so I can help them regarding the divorcing couples home equity solutions. So what that means, I'll give you an example. Let's say the husband wants to move on. He's on the property, he's on the mortgage, but they don't want to refinance because the rate's so low right now. But he's worried about not being able to qualify because he's on the other mortgage. And I said, not a problem, as long as we put in the settlement agreement the language that the wife's responsible for the mortgage from day one. I do not have to debt him for that mortgage payment, even though it shows up on the credit report. So a lot of people, they don't realize that. So yes, it shows up in the credit report, but because it's in the settlement agreement, I don't have to debt him. If it was not in the settlement agreement, then would have to show that the wife was making payments out of her own account for 12 months. Then at that point, I wouldn't have to debt him. So that's, one example as to, why you need to get a certified divorce lender professional early in on the process. Because what happens is when it comes to the divorce, in terms of, the real estate piece, there's really 4 pieces to the puzzle. There's the family law piece, which, helps put together the settlement agreement enough where it gets accepted by the courts. There's the financial and tax plan and tax implications. There's the real property itself, and then there's the mortgage planning. And you want to put all 4 of those together. And, you're asking a divorcing couple who's in the most emotionally charged state of their lives to put those pieces together. And they're probably not even an expert in any of those areas. So the divorce, mortgage professional, we take a holistic approach and we look at all those areas, and I'll, get involved with the family law attorney or the financial planner. I had a situation where right off the bat, the husband, wife, they said, we're going to sell everything right now. I said, all right, you are, and they happen to have a second home, not too far away from where the husband worked. And I said, listen, if you sell that second home, your vacation home, you sell it now, you're going to be paying all kinds of capital gains taxes. But if you live there for 2 years as your primary residence, commute to work, then sell it, the tax code says at that point, that was your primary residence, and you're going to save a lot more on capital gains tax. So, and I think it comes down to those 4 pieces that I mentioned, to get the real estate person, the financial person, myself, and the lawyer. We're all looking at it. We have different perspectives as to how we're looking at it. The family law attorney is looking at it in terms of the legal part. Again, I'll look at it, the whole thing, and just be cognizant of like tax implications, and also how to put together the agreement so that we can set them up post divorce, and because it turns out that there is life after divorce, and we want to set up the divorcing couple in the best light possible. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, yeah, no worries. It actually brought me to think of a couple other things, because as a divorce attorney, a lot of times you're trying to, I've had conversations also with other speakers and other parties and attorneys, and I deal a lot with accountants. And the question is, even when you're trying to write up a deal, it's very stressful sometimes. Well, but if I keep if you keep the house, how can I get another home? It's not fair to me. I have to wait for you to maybe wait 5 years for you to be able to qualify yourself for a refinance, or wait for the kids to get out of school. Where do I live? I can't qualify for another mortgage. I can't get a house. I'm in limbo. So it becomes a source of stress. So the fact that we can bring these potential solutions helps the lawyer, the accountant, the parties, the mortgage lender, everything, to do a little bit of planning if it's possible, with at least what the clients may have. I was surprised to hear you say that that banks, is it traditional banks that would not take into consideration? So for instance, if we write into an MSA, the wife is responsible for the mortgage. Is it traditional banks that accept that and will take it off for instance, the husband's debt to income ratio?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's the agencies,
okay.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. I was wondering if it was private lenders or something a little bit more different, right? Or if it was mainstream type lenders. That's interesting.
No, what it comes down to is it's we get all of us have the tools in the toolbox, and it's a matter of what you use for different strategies. It's kind of like you look at 2 carpenters. They both have the same tools. You have one that's like a master finish carpenter, and you got one that's a rough carpenter, and you want to have your kitchen done. Who are you going to call? Probably the master carpenter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I mean, I'll give you another example, which is acceptable in the agencies in terms of creating income. I had a situation where, the wife wasn't working, didn't have a job. She was a stay-at-home mom. But then when the husband was going to give her alimony, and he did, he gave her like $500,000, one lump sum, but she still didn't have a job. And so what we did, we needed to create income. So I took that 500,000, we created a revocable trust. And as long as you can show that whatever distributions that they're going to receive will last at least 3 years, we can use that as an income. So in this case, we used $9,000 a month, had a letter from the trustee stating they were going to receive $9,000 a month. We showed one distribution, and I was able to use that $9,000 for qualifying income, even though she didn't have a job, because I could show that it was going to last for at least 36 months. And that was acceptable. That was not portfolio. That was actually Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and she got a rate just like everyone else.
Wow, I'm surprised because I mean, I understand like with alimony, a lot of times I'll make sure whoever's receiving alimony gets it at least for 3 years if it's suitable, right? I mean, if they're not entitled to it in general. I keep that in mind when I'm structuring a deal because of that same reason, right? Depending on, you need income to be able to qualify for, either a mortgage or refinancing of the mortgage or whatever it is that you might need. I didn't realize that, especially being a revocable trust. I've heard some people using annuities and other instruments.
You can do that too.
But,
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I guess the revocable trust, you just want to make sure that it doesn't have, it's mandatory payments. So there's no discretion in it, I assume, right? Do the banks usually want to? Okay.
They can change the distributions after closing if they want. If they feel that $9,000's too much, they can choose to do that as well. Okay. So it's in the guidelines. So it's again, it's strategizing in terms of based on what you see in the guidelines. So if it's acceptable for the agencies, then you just work with it. If the agency's comfortable with it, then we're comfortable with it.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course. I was just so surprised to hear that, especially being revocable. Because like you pointed out, right after you close, you could change the terms.
I know. You know what? I shake my head too, but I said, you know what? let's do
they
it.
set it up. If they permit it, that's very important information, because most of the time you think you have to get into a revocable trust situation or a situation where you don't have control over it, right? That's usually where banks don't want to. That's why it's hard. You can have $10 million in the bank, but you don't actually have income other than maybe investment income, but they don't even like to include that. You can have assets, but I've heard lenders, but you can go and spend it tomorrow in Vegas. So we really want to see income rather than assets, even though you can technically pay for the house, with your own assets. So we run across these kind of weird rules sometimes, right? That kind of are scary, and they kind of push people in corners that maybe don't exist.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's like anything, right? The industry keeps going in cycles, right? So they, back in the 90s, early 2000s, we had the no income verification products, the no doc product, and then 2008 happened, and then they got rid of it. Well, guess what? It's coming back. It's actually here. It's here. Wall Street can't help themselves, and as rise in real estate, the prices as it goes up, a lot of errors get kind of swept under the carpet, and so it's like if someone's getting in trouble, they can just refinance before it even shows, and then that loan gets paid off, and the investor says, "Wow, these are great performing loans." So we go in cycles.
It's funny you said that, because I really didn't. I was getting that feeling, but I was like, no, there's no way they're going back there or in any direction there. But I guess they are, aren't they?
Yeah, and that happened in the 70s too. Where everything they had the no income verification, and then everything blew up, and they'll say never again, and it came back in the 90s, 2000s, and they said never again. Well, it's here again.
Wow! Oh my goodness. That's kind of scary if you think about it,
I know.
If it worked out, great. You know what I mean? It'd be great for everyone to be able to have homes and be able to make more homeowners, but it becomes a problem with like what happened in 2008.
Yeah, exactly.
So That's interesting you said that. So, I mean, but I mean, if they set the guidelines, you can get someone financed. It does help at the end of the day, your customers, my potential clients, anyone that's going through this, they set up the guidelines and there's nothing wrong with it. They're doing it. You're not doing anything improper or illegal, if you qualify under their guidelines. So,
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So another question. So what type of borrowers do you work with as a certified divorce lending professional? I assume, of course, divorcing clients, but what do they do? Also, are they business owners? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that demographic.
Yeah, no, it's a wide range. I mean, I love working with the self-employed borrowers, because that's how I started when I got into it. Not first time home buyers, but not so much for divorcing couples. But it's just a wide range, and it's a matter of how to get them to qualify. It's all about qualifying. There are times when you might, let's say, I'm working with the woman and she's been home and the husband's handling all the finances, and it might get to the point where she has no credit at all. And so a nice website that I have people go to develop credit, it's called Credit Cards with an S, creditcards.com. People can go on there no matter what your credit situation is. You can get a credit card. You could be foreclosed yesterday and there'll be a secured credit card. The whole idea is to reestablish yourself. Typically, if you open up a couple credit cards, use it like you would use for groceries, whatever, but make sure you pay it off every month to get a credit history going. After like 6 months, they'll start showing up on your credit report, and then you can reestablish yourself that way. So every situation is different. I'll take a look. It might be a situation where, depending on the time of year, if someone's about to file their taxes, someone that's self-employed, I'll say, let me take a look at it first. I just want to see what you're doing for write-offs, and I'll look at it. I know I'm not a CPA, but I can tell them, check this with your CPA. I think you're doing too many write-offs. Like when I say too many write-offs, like I don't think it's going to matter if you have an extra 20,000 or none. You're probably still going to pay the same tax. So just double check that with your CPA to see if it's even worth taking that write-off, because what you're doing is you're taking away your qualifying income. So
yes,
and there may be a case where they'll pay more taxes. I say just hold off on the write-offs this year, if you want to be able to qualify. And because really what I'm doing in these examples is really pre-approving these people for whatever they want to do going forward. So it's helping them, get ahead of it and strategize with all this.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so self-employed individuals, for instance, they're going to have, depending on if they're an S corp, corporation, depending on whatever their tax situation is. Do you work with them sometimes do banks look at distributions? Because typically it just depends on whether they might have basis, or is it really not always necessarily income? Like, what do you do with that? Because you're talking about those sort of different thought processes with businesses, which comes down to the self-employed individual and how that's going to look. What are banks going to look at in that respect?
They're going to look at to see what notes payable due in less than 12 months. Okay. And if there is, they're going to want to see that there's enough assets to cover that. Otherwise, they'll amortize the whole thing and they might not qualify. I've also been in situations where notes payable every 12 months, but that's something that happens every year, and we just get a letter from the CPA or even the lending institution just explaining, this is how we do it every year, and then would be able to overlook that. Depreciation, we're able to add that back towards income.
Oh wow!
Yeah, yep.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yep, that net carryover losses. Maybe a loss that happened a couple of years ago, but they can only write off so much per year. We were able to throw that back in. So it's stuff like that. One-time expense. Maybe they decided to just pay cash, well not cash, but write a check for maybe a piece of machinery or something instead of financing it, and that was going to be a one-time expense. We could throw that back in to get them income. See, the CPA's job is to hide as much income as possible. Mine's to bring it back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There sometimes could be conflicting interests, so to speak, So,
Mhm.
because of course they're like, we want you to pay least tax possible, and you're like, yeah, but I want you to show income,
Yeah.
otherwise you're not getting approved. So,
Yeah, and oftentimes I'll actually get on the phone with their CPA, and we'll just we'll just go through it, and then he'll just say, all right, yeah, we can adjust this way, we can do this, and CPAs can adjust it to still minimize the tax, different categories and what have you.
yes,
I had one where they were writing off all this expense, but there was no depreciation, and the CPA is like, oh, you know what, now that I think about it, yeah, we can
we can
depreciate
do
some
that.
stuff this year, so we'll offset that,
No.
things of
Yes,
that nature. You
yes,
know,
yeah. I see that.
so
So interesting, very interesting.
yeah.
So,
But one
uh,
other thing I want to mention too, is when I'm looking through trying to pre-approve someone,
mhm,
and even if they're not getting divorced, this is a good strategy, and that is this: let's say someone co-signed for their children's auto loan or student loan, and then
mhm,
they go, that's going to show up in their credit report, and we're going to debt them for it. So unless providing the child's on the note with them, if the payments are coming out of the child's account and checking account, and no one else is on the checking account for
yeah,
12 months, then I no longer have to debt them for the student loan or auto loan. So whether you're going through a divorce or not,
mhm,
I recommend, have the payments come out of a child's account. And,
yeah,
that's in 12 months from now, because I've seen that happen a couple of times, like even during like someone trying to refinance, they couldn't qualify because the student loans were due and their payments were like 2,000 a month. And it was just putting them over the debt ratio.
yeah,
So they had to wait a year because I advised them to stop making the payments out of the children's account. And then the other thing, now we're talking about
mhm,
making money, paying out of a checking account. Business owners, I see it all the time.
mhm,
They don't really open up a business checking account. They open up a personal account. So it's
yeah,
like you got to open up a business account because if you're going to pay that auto loan out of the business, make sure it comes out of the business account. If we show it 12 months out of the business account, I don't have to debt you for that auto loan that shows up.
right.
Uh, Opposed to if it comes out of your personal account, then because I see it so many times where someone said, "Oh, it's my business account." I said, "Yeah, but it's out of your personal account." So you didn't do yourself justice on that.
Yeah, no, and I see that a lot with cars for children. So a lot of times they might, parents might put their, the first car for a child under their name. They have credit, they
Yep.
finance it, but either the other party's paying for it, or like you're saying, a child's account's paying for it, right?
Yep.
It's good to show that. The other thing you do want to be a little bit careful with, but you can do some planning with from just a legal point of view, is you do want to be careful if you're making some of these payments from UTMAs or what kind of account it is for what
Yep.
expenses, because not all expenses are permitted by UTMAs for on behalf of the child. So you have to make sure you're also not crossing those potential lines also that could get you in trouble. Most of the time, it's not an issue. One parent is not going to, most of the time children are not going to sue you for doing so, especially if they receive the benefit of it.
Right.
But if you get a contentious situation, you can actually get the other party potentially suing you for misuse of the funds. So talking ahead, maybe even putting this in an agreement. Okay, the parties agree that this account will be used for this and this and this ahead of time so that it can't be a source of potential litigation or problems down the road.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So just from a purely legal point of view that I have seen, better in writing so that neither the parties can say, well, why are you doing that? You're taking the kid's money. You promised to pay the car. You know what I mean? And,
Yep.
Johnny's paying the car. So that can be an issue. I know it's kind of two steps down the road or thinking far, but it actually happens in litigation, and especially family law cases. It
No,
just
no,
comes out of
you got to
nowhere.
think of all that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just put it all out there. All a
Yes.
bunch of what ifs.
Yes. Yes. So that's very interesting. So also, what other kind of tips do you have when you're doing an initial mortgage planning? I mean, like, so initial divorce mortgage planning. Like, I think we talked a little bit about where you should do some pre-approval, some planning in the sense of trying to see, writing an MSA, a marital settlement agreement, in a manner in which is favorable to you to be able to be financed or the other parties to be able to be financed in the future. thinking about their credit, establishing credit. Is there anything else that you can think of also as a tip to help people in their initial planning?
Yeah, it's something that comes up a lot is, let's say someone they want to do an equity buyout, and their initial reaction is, you know what, you know, the husband, let's say the husband's moving out, he wants 200,000.
Mhm.
You know, we get the appraisal and all that, and they say, well, geez, the interest rate is so much higher, and we don't want to do this until the rates come down. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about this. You say the rate's so much higher, so what does this mean? Well, you're going to take out 200,000, and naturally the mortgage payments will go up just because now you have a $200,000 larger mortgage balance. But also because the rate's higher, let's say the payment above and beyond that's another $500 a month. They're like, yeah, that's a lot of money. I said, right, let's keep talking. So what does that mean? How long, to the wife, how long are you going to be in the house for? 5 years. So $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year. That's $30,000 over 5 years. I looked at the husband, said, you're going to take 200,000, right? It's like, yeah. I go, how about 170?
Yeah.
And subsidize that $500 a month. And he said, well, the 200,000, I said, look, you do realize the only reason why you're getting 200,000 is because the interest rates were so low. Because the interest rates were so low is what helped the values of these houses go crazy. If the interest rates were not so low, you'd probably only be getting 150,000. But you're going to get 170. He goes, well, 30,000 is a lot of money. And I said, so isn't 170 right now, today. I think about this. You want to wait for the rates to drop. Let's say it takes 2 years. What happens if your wife's in a situation where she's unable to refinance 2 years from now? You're going to be, and let's say within that 2 years, you need that 170,000. You're self-employed. This 170,000 is going to be consuming you. Your productivity is going to drop like a rock, and that 30,000 is going to be like nothing. You take the 170. I understand CDs are paying out pretty good these days, 4 or 5%. 5 years from now, there's just $30,000, and then it goes back to your vision. Your goal said that you want to dissolve this marriage and move on at all costs.
Yeah.
This is the cost, and this 170 in your pocket, on your lap right now. You're going to be able to just move on and not have to worry about, because your name will still be on the mortgage. And so you got a clean slate. You don't have to worry about the mortgage not being paid on time, and you want to move on. So it's just, so you just kind of present that option to them. I mean, I know if it was me, if I was in that husband's shoes, I would take the 170 and just, and again, just say that 200,000 is, it's just, you're lucky the way the market is. I mean, I don't think the house market will drop in these higher areas, but if they do, and 2 years from now you got to redo that, maybe you're not going to get the 200,000.
Right.
You just, so it's a solution to the idea of we can't do it because the rate's so high, but then it's a matter of going back to saying, well, we discussed your vision and goal. This accomplishes it. We never really talked about 170 versus 200. We talked about what your life's going to be like after divorce, and you have this nice plan going, and this $30,000 is stopping you, and so that's what conversations that are happening. And I have no problem having that conversation. I got, with my clients, people say, they say, you have clients, not customers. I said, yeah, I have clients. They said, what's the difference between a customer and a client? I said, well, a customer is always right. Client is someone you save from themselves.
Yes, correct. Yes. Yeah.
So,
And I've had that conversation with clients, my clients, on various occasions. And even we're sitting in mediation and we're kind of stuck. And I say, okay, If you don't want to necessarily agree, I understand. And if there's not anything else I can give you, maybe there's a, a small boat you guys have that you've had for a while, it's worth 10. Maybe I can even you out a little bit more that way. Okay, no, we're stuck. We're stuck on this 30,000, for instance, to use your example. And I'm like, okay, how much money do you think you're going to spend not settling? Continuing to fight to try to force the sale of the house. Then you have to pay, you're going to be splitting the asset or the equity after closing cost, after commission, after you fix it up a little bit. Let's talk about that cost and how much you're going to end up there. Because that 30 looks so big now. Yeah. So,
That's right.
and it's sort of like, yeah, no, you know what? I'll take it. Thank you very much. Because they'll probably lose a lot more than that if they did that. If you have to force the sale, I don't think it's even assuming you agree and you sell the house and that's part of the agreement, you're going to get less anyways. And so it becomes like, if you're not going to agree, then we have to go to court and tell the court why the wife should be able to stay there. You're going to spend more money on attorney fees. You have no stability. It could take them a year and a half. Someone can appeal. That 30,000 looks really good right now, doesn't it? So it just depends on what the number is, but yeah.
Absolutely.
But if you put it in those terms, because you're right, it's ultimately like, I just want this over with. Well, I say, if that's the case, is it at all cost or at what cost? Like, where's your break even? Where's your done? I can't go past this point. And I always tell my clients, consider even going past that point, because when you're sitting in a room of mediation, you start thinking about how a judge is going to perceive this evidence and these testimonies and stuff. You're running a lot of risk. You really want to look at this from a dynamic point of view. And I think someone like you helps someone do that. And you give solutions to our clients as a family law attorney on how this is doable, and this is another solution. It may not be perfect, but it's an option to get what you want.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you said, if it ends up getting in front of a judge, you might not like what the judge has to say.
Yeah.
It's like you think you have something going. Yeah, you got a nice plan, and the judge looks at things totally different than what you did, and you're like, oh, why did I even come in here?
Right, exactly. Or even appraisals. Well, my appraiser said it's worth 210. Yours said it's worth 180.
Right.
Okay, so you're going to litigate it. There's a 30,000 right there, and a judge might just split the difference, and you're already starting from a premise of half. Anyways, it's 15,000 instead of 30, the top end value of it. So it's just like, but I think and I understand clients they're not in the thick of this. They're not seeing this every day to kind of see those other angles. You don't get divorced every day. But then they kind of go, oh, okay. It's hard. It's an emotional time, like you pointed out. It's a difficult time. You try to bring a little bit of sanity to it also.
Yeah, absolutely. And on our end, we just try to set the divorcing clients up in the best light possible, because there is life after divorce. And then it's, we haven't even talked about the children part.
Right. Correct.
As well, so it's at least get this part buttoned down, and then you can, enjoy your children as much as you can, post divorce.
Right. And potentially giving them a better, you can provide them with a solution maybe for the children to stay in the house for those 5 extra years while they finish school.
Exactly.
That has value in of itself, right? Than just scorched earth,
Yes.
and that's it, burn everything down if we have to, when you can present that the kids can stay, here's a solution. Oh, great. Jimmy can finish high school. Susie can finish, high school too. She's in middle school. In 5 years, she'll be done with school. That does hopefully matter to a lot of parents. And it's scary when they go to get divorced. I think to myself, oh, now what do we do? I can't afford this house. If you do this, and if you want to do this, but being creative, I think offers those type of solutions and helps the family overall, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, children are watching both parents like a hawk, so
oh yeah,
their behavior and everything. So it's just, you just gotta behave accordingly.
Yes, and they do. They watch for good and for bad, because they watch. They go, okay, all right. I see who mom is. I see who dad is, and then other times they're taking it. Well, mom doesn't like it when I do this, but dad says yes to me. And they also learn for bad too.
Yeah, of
So
course.
they learn to manipulate as well. They're like, oh, but dad doesn't like when I say this and mom does. And, before you know it, they're getting, they're getting their way too. So I wanted to ask you, I think we talked a little bit about the current face of the sort of the mortgage finance and the real estate market. And it's a little bit, we talked about it getting easing, right? Lending easing. But at the same time, we're in an environment where there's high interest rates
Yes.
compared to at least in the last, 5 years, 7 years, well, 10 years, or pretty much at least. So what are we doing? How does this change? Like, what does this do to, in general, the market? What is your take
I
on that?
I find that the people that can still afford the houses are in a much better situation because they have less people making offers on the homes. Like, because I have clients say, "Oh, geez, the interest rates are so high now. I'm going to hold off." I said, "No, now's your time, because the values of the homes are not dropping. Definitely not in
Yeah.
the metropolitan area. They're just not. The demand is there, and people still have good jobs. And plus the first time home buyer, that's a different profile than what it
Yeah.
was 20 years ago. Now it's 20 years ago was someone that really just starting out in their career or whatever, and not really having much saved or whatever, income wise,
Mhm.
just barely making it. Now it's like you get two professionals, they're in their early 30s, they're doing quite well. Some, they're paying rent 3,500, 4,000 a month.
Right.
So
Right.
there's no payment shock for them. So even though the rates say around 7%, the total monthly payment is going to be around what they're paying for rent. So to them, it's not a big deal. Where it is a big deal are the folks that were looking for homes 2 years ago that still haven't found one. When they were looking, the interest rates were below 3%. Now they saw their purchasing power dwindle by 100,000 based on the monthly mortgage payment. Those people are very upset.
Yeah.
The ones just entering the market within the last 6 months to a year, they don't know any different because they were always figuring their monthly payment based on today's rates. So it's
Mhm.
and the demand is there. You have a young couple, they have a baby, and now they have their second one on the way, and they're in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. They have a need. They're gonna buy something. It's kind of like if you have a tooth and you need it fixed, you go to the dentist. You're not going to say how much you charge. You're going to say, "Fix my
Not if it
tooth."
hurts that bad. Yeah, you're like, whatever you want.
That's right, and that's what's
Yeah.
happening with these first-time home buyers. They have a need. They need to have a roof over their head and have a family, have a nice house where they can start creating good memories.
Mhm.
That's what they're looking at right now, and they understand that the rates could drop a year or two from now, and give them an opportunity to refinance to lower their monthly payment, because the house.
Right.
I'm going to be bold and say that values are not dropping. And I tell you, because
Mhm.
it's all about the jobs, more importantly, how people feel about their jobs, and they're still feeling pretty good about their jobs. And as long as that happens, people will buy. I mean, because I've been in situations where someone barely can afford the house, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to be working overtime. I'm going to be doing this. Yeah, I'm going for it." And then I've had other people, vice president of a division, making all kinds of money, saying, "You know what? I think they might wipe out my division next month. I'm not buying anything."
Yeah.
So it's all about how people feel about their jobs. If they feel good, they will spend, and
Yes.
they will go. Right now they're feeling good. Maybe not as good as last year, but they're still feeling
Right.
confident about that, and the demand is most certainly there.
Yeah, the
Um,
job market's so strong still.
it
So you're
is.
right. That makes sense why they still have a sense that they can still pay these higher prices, and they feel comfortable doing so. And it's better than paying rent, where it's not going anywhere, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was around 2008
Mhm.
when 2008 happened with Lehman Brothers and all that. And I
Yeah.
remember these realtors, they thought it was a curse to have a listing. They were begging for buyers. You know, there was all these houses for sale that no one was stepping up at all.
Yeah.
And then 2, 3 years later, then it just switched real fast to all of a
Yeah.
sudden a seller's market. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
but it's been a seller's market for the longest time because of the shortage,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the demand is still there. So I think the market, people still need a place to live,
Yeah.
and the values are not really going to drop, you know, unless there's a particular area or something. Maybe some of these towns might be like one company all of a sudden deciding to pack up and leave,
Yeah.
and you have like 20,000 people unemployed all of a sudden. Maybe something like that would drop the value, but for the most part, I mean, especially up here in Boston, I mean, we have like sub economies within sub economies, so there's so many different industries up here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, everybody ironically was counting out New York's market. That's it. They're done. They're doomed. Everyone's moving out of New York, and they have their issues. Don't get me wrong. They've had some slowdown and a lot of people leaving, and they all came down to us, mostly in Florida.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it came down to mostly all. But you watch, it's bouncing back. It's bouncing back and doing well. They're having to get a little creative with some of the stuff. Some of the commercial space is becoming an issue, but I think everyone just thought, that's it. Here we go. Here's finally the end of New York. And I say, you never count out New York. I feel the same thing about Boston and certain cities. Like, you just never count them out.
No.
They have such a strong, mature economies and industries, and I'm like, nope, don't ever do that. I wouldn't put money on that one. So
yeah, you know what happens too? It's like you think of the political climate, and it's not so much the climate, but what gets hopped on in the news.
Yes.
Because there was something one of the senators said. He said, he goes, Republicans and Democrats, he goes, we get along a lot better than you think. It just doesn't get reported. They I know, I was shocked to hear that too.
Well, trust me, I think if I don't know if they're just jumping in front of the cameras to say the news we don't want to hear, that they want to look like they're divided, or you're right. I don't know if the news is just not capturing it. It does look like they just can't get along for nothing.
At all.
Yeah. Yes. They can't agree on the color of the sky nowadays,
I know.
Although they do say it's all the times off record, there are other conversations happening. But at the end of the day, if they can't come on the record to do so and work together, it just doesn't help.
No, what's the point? What's the point of them being there?
Yeah,
So,
well, I think we've hit quite a bit of points today. I think it's been a pretty exciting conversation and helpful. It's a good time to have these type of conversations. There's still, of course, divorces, and there's financial difficulties. And there's people actually thinking about getting divorced, but they just don't know if they can afford to do so.
Right.
So I think these type of podcasts help so much to say this is not hopeless. There's other ways to look at this. There's creative ways to look at this. It's not black or white. It's not hopeless. Sometimes there are solutions that you can potentially find to help you. So
no, there really is, definitely. I mean, and people don't see it. They're walking in a storm, and they don't really realize that there is. I'll say it again: life after divorce.
Yes.
And you just got to just stop by saying to yourself, or even writing it down, what do you want it to look like?
Yeah.
And just keep your eye on that.
Yes. It'll help you get through it and not be irrational or too emotional about it. I know it is. These are very difficult times. It's hard sometimes to be rational, depending on what the other party is doing, or you're scared, or things are happening. But there is a lot of times people spend so much time trying to get out of divorce, and they're killing each other, and a scorched earth and all these problems. And they don't realize that they're going to carry out all the damage that they have done, and all the scarring they've done during that divorce gets carried over to that post-divorce life, one way or another. Whether you spent too much money, and you could have saved money at your assets and had other solutions, or potentially a better life after divorce. But you're just so angry that you're just not seeing that. And really, you still have a life. You're still a human being that's going to go on and have new experiences and beautiful experiences. So, but it's hard to see that. So being able to lean on professionals such as yourself, like a mortgage lender, lending professional, attorneys, accountants, to help us kind of see through these times, I think really helps a lot, and it makes it more manageable, possibly.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So. Well, this was wonderful. Do you have any other points for us, or pointers, or anything you could think of? I think we kind of covered everything I had on the questions. We kind of did it sort of in a different way, just in conversation, kind of going through examples.
Yeah. No. I would just say, as I just said, just really figure out what you want your life to look like when it's all done, and just look at that. That's the prize, and that's the most important thing. So you just got to just keep reminding yourself your vision. It's that simple.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And if you don't have the vision, it's tough to set a goal. You don't know where the goal is.
No, you don't know where the goalpost is.
That's
You
right.
want to be happy. You know,
That's
you
right.
do. You want to know which way to start running to the end zone. Right? Which way is the end zone for you?
Absolutely.
And you don't want to be hitting on the other side either. The other side
No, that's not good.
No. So, well, this is wonderful, and I want to thank you so much, Mr. John, for coming and being with us here today and talking and giving us some wonderful tips. And hopefully our audience will enjoy it and it's helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yes, yes. Thank you so very much.
All right.
Yes. So for everybody, just thank you for tuning in. And if you miss this podcast, it'll be listed on Apple Podcasts where you can see it again. We ask everyone to, if you enjoyed this, to follow us on our social media accounts and stay tuned for more, hopefully fun and informative podcasts. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right.